Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Good. We're back, and we're better than ever. At least I hope we are. Maybe not as good as Battlefield, but we feel great. Today, we're talking about Battlefield 2042's Update 4.2.0, the map rework for Discarded, as well as the quality of life improvements. So, let's jump right in. Before we get into the main meat of the show, I do want to preface this. This was recorded a couple weeks ago. I am recovering from a sickness, and I'm trying to get caught up. So you'll see this episode, and then a few days later, you'll see the most recent episode of the podcast. And then we'll be all caught up and back to the weekly schedule, which we're super pumped for. Anyway, let's get right into it. Okay, man, how you doing? Battlefielding.
I'm loving it at the moment. I had a few games last night, and it literally just every update just feels better. Like, I actually had a moment where I was like, damn, this game is actually now really good. Like, I was just playing along, having fun, and I think even though the game has been on the up for a while, I've still just had it in my head like, this game had a rough launch and it's still not the game we wanted. But like, I had a moment last night where I was like, damn, this game is actually good now. Like, it's actually a genuinely good Battlefield game. It's not, I'm not going to say it's the best. It's not up there in that top, echelon compared to the prime Battlefield games, but it is, in my opinion, it's now a good Battlefield game. So I'm having a lot of fun with it lately, and hopefully it continues on beyond Season 5.
That would be fantastic. I would love that very much, and I think many other people would agree on that too. On that note, we did get a comment on our last episode of the podcast from Imp Reb, who says, quote, "I'm one of the major haters of Battlefield 2042 that dropped after about 20 hours in Season 1. Even I have to say that they got the game humming now, and I squad up with some bros from the Battlefield Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 era, and I'm almost done with Season 4, the Season 4 pass. I played nothing between when I dropped and trying and enjoying the fixed they should have released. But I really don't want another Battlefield 5 situation. They just dropped the game again. BF5 was in a way better place than Battlefield 2042 right now, and they just dropped it after it was getting good. They cannot do that again. Keep adding content and making the game better right up to the release of the next Battlefield. COD does this, and Battlefield has to do that."
Could not agree more. That literally summarized my entire thoughts pretty much. I just think it's just dumb to, like, if they just do it again. I think I literally ranted about this last week and multiple times on this podcast. Yeah. So I'll leave it short. But if they do that again, they are not smart. That is all I have to say about that.
I wouldn't say you could trust their statements of reinvesting into the future of Battlefield if that's the case. Like, if they are dedicated to the future of Battlefield as a franchise, they really need to make Battlefield 2042 the game it should have been, and then continue to update it, add content to it. And on that front, they say this in the the 4.2 update patch notes. Experience our penultimate map rework. So this seems like the second to last that they are like really saying this is the real map rework. Until we get into, the one we all hate.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what content we're going to get after that, because obviously, like, you probably can't call the reworks content, but at the end of the day, they are like in a lot of updates, they are like the
big thing. They're the thing.
In this update, I would say Discarded is the thing. Like, that's what I'm interested in. There's obviously a lot of good fixes in that, but for me, it's like, I'm here to play Discarded.
Yeah.
What do they do after that? Like, do they just not do that and there's no extra content, or do we get an extra few weapons, or do we get, like, I'm very curious to see how they do that, because I hope we don't just get nothing. It's just like, because say in this update, what did we get other than discarded in terms of content?
Honestly, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
In terms of content, I would say nothing.
Yeah.
We got the rework, and that's it. Because the rest of the stuff is quality of life stuff. That's like the end of round improvements, the Liz specialist mastery improvements. Uniform soldier aiming is now on by default, and the collection and customization screens are now a little bit different. And the plus system looks a little bit different when you activate it in the game.
Yeah, so like because of that, imagine this update without discarded. Like then it wouldn't really be that interesting. It wouldn't be enough for me personally to jump. Like I might jump on and play a game, and I'm talking from a fan perspective. For me, it's like I make content on it, so obviously I'm going to play it. But if I'm just a fan, like I'm not going to just be like, oh, they changed the end of round. Let me dedicate the next.
Oh my gosh, I'm jumping on right now.
Yeah, so like I just hope that they still do manage to put out some actual, even if it's just like literally a couple portal weapons. It doesn't need to be like crazy amounts, but I hope they do stick with something rather than like, okay, we're done with the reworks now, so like that's it. We're all done now, because that is where the game will slowly die down. I think if they stop with the content, again, it's rough to call this stuff content, but it kind of is. It's new. It's a new piece of.
Well, when you look at it like this, it was either you don't play discarded, which is where we were before, and now you can tolerate discarded.
Yeah, exactly. So,
which let's get into that. Like, what are your thoughts on the rework? Like, how have you been
surprisingly like it. I haven't played it enough to fully form an opinion on it, but from what I've played so far, I think it's not like nearly as good as say like Orbital and stuff, but it's better than I expected, because I didn't think they could really do anything with this one, to be honest.
Yeah.
And for me, that's really all I can say until I play like hours and hours on it. It's better than I thought it would be. I can't say whether it's really good or really bad, but it's definitely already better than I thought.
I would agree with that. Like, from the time that I've played, the YouTube videos that I've watched on it, breaking down all the specific changes and all that stuff, like it not only feels different, it looks different. Like, there are a lot of new areas. Like, just before we hopped on, I was playing a bit of it. Hopped on discarded, and that area looks entirely new. Not just it looks like they added more storage containers here.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought it was going to be. And the other thing is, like, it didn't almost need more cover. There's actually a fair bit already on discarded. There's a lot of there's definitely some areas that are too open, but like on all the areas where there's a flag or like there's a high traffic area, I feel like there wasn't even a lack of cover there. So I was curious, like, how are they even going to fix it without fully changing it? But yeah, they've not only added a bit more cover, but they've kind of actually changed a few spots. Like even the C flag, like I didn't think that really needed a change, but now it's way better than it was. So yeah, I guess I'd say I'm pleasantly surprised. That's really all I have to say so far, because I don't really like, having a full opinion on something that I've played like 3 games on. But as of right now, I'm definitely happier than I thought I would be.
I think it's an odd decision that they seem to deprioritize the discarded ship. Like, that definitely seemed more of a focus in the previous version of the map. Yeah. And it definitely seems less so.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It feels like, and maybe that's just because it had a bit of cover, so maybe they're like, oh, we don't need to do that much there. But at the same time, like, that for me is the point of the map. That's like the central area. Yeah. So even if it didn't necessarily need heaps of changes, I would have liked to see like a cool little rework that makes it like, oh, okay, now this is like nice and refreshed.
Or make it more of like a central focus of the map. Yeah. Because it's definitely, it's currently at the D1, D2, and a little bit of C. Yeah. And then the rest of the map is everything except for that. So it definitely seems like a less percentage focus. And I feel like previously I was going to the ship a lot more and that whole area around it a lot more. And I'm not going there as much as I was previously. And I haven't played it enough to see if that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, I think it would have been cool. I don't know how like it would work logistically, but it would have been cool for them to actually put an extra flag on the boat, or like have it between. So like you've got D1 and D2, maybe push them further up towards that far end, and then have like one at the other end of the boat, and then C that's like down that. It's like not quite on the boat, but it's not that far away.
Or make it more of like a boatyard. Yeah,
like having 3 flags. I mean, technically there is 3 flags. There's D1, D2, and C, but
yeah,
having
it's barely
3
C,
sectors, I guess you would say, would have been cooler and it would have like made it more of a focus, I think, because it's like you can almost win the game from that. Anywhere that has 3 flags in it, like look at any of the classic Battlefield maps where there's like 3 in a close area. If you just get all of them, you win. So it's like that becomes the absolute like that is where everyone is, because it's like if you control those flags, you're going to win the game. In this, it feels like you can just let the other team have D1, D2, and C, and you can just get all the other ones and dominate. So it's like, that's my only complaint. And it's not really a complaint because I didn't expect it to happen, but in hindsight, I guess it would have been cool to have like, more focus on the boat and kind of like cram a bit more into that area, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that the reason that they did it this way is to make it stand out a little bit more from Stranded?
Maybe.
Because Stranded's the main big ship map now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. That's probably a lot of why they did that. Also, just like, we all played on the boat already, so maybe them focusing on other areas is to be like, hey, by the way, there is actually more to this map than just the boat. And then now, to a lot of people, it'll feel very different, because maybe that's my problem, is I'm still just sticking to the boat more often than not. Maybe I do need to go to other maps. To other flags. So, it's not really, the little issues I have aren't even really complaints. They're more just things I'm like
noticing,
curious about more than anything.
Yeah.
Into like why they made those decisions. But like I said, I think it's so far been a fair bit better than I thought. And especially when it comes to the other like points on the map, which for me are less important, but they are also a lot better than the actual main areas.
I can't remember how the original map layout was, but I feel like I like this more. I saw someone describe it as like a potato looking map. Like it definitely feels like they're utilizing that space a lot more, and it's a lot more clear where you should be going and how you're playing the map now. Previously, I would just like walk around running aimlessly, but that's basically what I did on all of the launch Battlefield 2042 maps. So now that it feels a lot more directional, I really like that, and I feel like it was a good decision ultimately.
Yeah, I think any map that has like that just clearly shows you where you need to be is a good map, which I know like some people don't want their hand held and all that, but it's not really holding your hand. It's more like
it's just called good layout.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this is the important section of the map. You don't have to go there if you don't want, but it's clear that this is where you probably should be if you want to try and win the game. I like maps like that. There's a lot of conquest maps in not even just this game, but any Battlefield. The ones that I don't like are the ones where I'll run over and capture a flag, and then after that I'm like, now what? Like, I don't know where to go.
Do I just?
It just doesn't have any flow to it. So I think that's what they've done well with this map, is it now does have a flow. You capture a flag and you know, okay, I probably should go to this next one. That's where the action's going to be. Prior to that, on Discarded, I didn't know where to go. I'd get one flag and be like, okay, well, now I'm lost. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I think that's the most important change for me, that really, they can do that to any map. Like, that's the biggest change. Even if they never added cover or changed any of the spots, if they just changed the actual locations of the flags to where there is actually a flow to where you kind of feel like you're meant to go, that is like the most important change to me.
Well, that was like step one of their map reworks. Is they started with those the flag changes. They're like, this is our band-aid, and then we're gonna do the big change.
Yeah,
and exactly. I feel like we were all concerned originally, like, oh my gosh, are they really gonna make the changes that we want? But I think this honestly gives me hope, because I still think Breakaway is still the most like drastically changed, and I hope that they do that with the next map rework that they do, and that it really, you can really get the payoff, because I think that's kind of what we were expecting for the majority of them to do, is the bigger, more drastic reworks when it comes to these original maps in the game.
Yeah, I think like Orbital, Breakaway, those are probably the two that I think when they said the word reworks, that's what we all, I don't know if I want to say expected, because I didn't know what to expect, but that's what I hoped
kind of hoped for, yeah.
Yeah, that's like the level of change that I was wanting. And with those maps, we got it. With the others, like Kaleidoscope and Manifest, we just didn't get it. Like that, they're barely changed to me. So I'd say this one's kind of in the middle. It's definitely not as bad as those ones. It's also not nearly as good as like Breakaway and that. But I do hope that Hourglass is closer to Breakaway level changes than something like this, where I think for this map, for Discarded, this amount of change is fine. But for this, for Hourglass, this amount of change is not fine, because that will still suck. Like, it needs a drastic overhaul. So I'm definitely curious to see how they go there. And I hope, because it has taken them the longest, I hope that that's why, because they've put like the extra time into it. Because it could be a really, really cool map if they pull it off. It's just whether they actually can pull it off or not.
Well, I think that was one of the big things that has been getting better ever since they started doing new maps, is every single new map has gotten better and better, or at least has attempted to get better and better. And I'd say I think all of them have lived up to a set standard bar that we've gotten. I mean, just look at the last one we got, good old Swedenland. I think like even with Shatterpoint and all that stuff, like we're getting some really good ideas. I still hope and wish that the new maps that we got were like some very interesting locations, but what they did with those seemingly boring, like overarching like descriptors, they did a really good job with them, and they're fun. And we're seeing them taking a lot of the learnings that they did with the map reworks into consideration when it comes to the new maps.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, is the biggest part of the reworks, is just what they're learning from it. Like, it's actually, in a weird way, a good thing for the franchise that the maps sucked, and then they've had to actually go in and be like, oh, this is not good. How do we fix this? Because now they know what's wrong. Because in previous, say in like Battlefield 1, there was like a couple maps that weren't that good, but they don't learn from those, because people just go, oh, I don't like them. They didn't have to fix them. They just were like, no one really likes that, so okay, we just won't, like, who cares? We don't have to change it. But they're not learning because of that. So now they've had to be forced to be like, okay, what is bad about this map, and how do we fix it? Which then I think for the next game and for maps, if they do go ahead with year 2 content, all the new maps in this game, all the new maps in the next game, I think will be better, because they now have they've had to go in and gut their old maps, figure out what wasn't good, and replace it with good content. So then when they're making the brand new ones, they won't really make that mistake again. Doesn't mean they're definitely going to be all amazing, but I think it definitely gives them a better perspective of essentially just what they need to do, like what a good map requires, really.
I think we've described it in the past as Battlefield 2042 is the ultimate learning situation and moment for all of the new developers that we heard were hired for the game. Yeah. Because I think that was the key thing that really separated Battlefield 2042 from past games and I wouldn't say it was in a good way, but they had a lot of their senior team leave, and they had a very junior team that were in charge of rebuilding and building Frostbite 4. that the entire team that built the Frostbite engine originally had left. So they were starting from less than zero. They had to learn everything, and then they had to do the work, which was one of the reasons why the game got delayed and was in the state that it was, because they had a lot less development time than they would have normally. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of these learning situations are ultimately good for the future of the franchise, because if they didn't get made in this one and it was just kind of meh, they wouldn't get the key learnings of like, oh my gosh, these maps are awful, please make them better. What other game franchise has ever been like, yo, you know those maps that we launched with, we know they suck, we're gonna go back and rework them?
Yeah, it's a good point that you make, that this is ultimately a good thing, even though it sucked for this game. It's almost the same. It's almost like a sporting equivalent of, obviously we know the dev team is young. Sometimes when you have a young team in, whatever sport you follow, they're not going to do well because they're inexperienced. But when they have a tough season, that actually makes them all better players. So the players who have gone through that adversity end up being better when they're in like the prime of their career than they would have been if they were just playing in a good team the whole time, because they wouldn't have learned those things. So sometimes a team sucking actually makes them all better, and when they end up winning, they wouldn't have won if they didn't suck initially, if that makes sense. Yeah. Not saying this dev team sucks, that sounds very rude. I just mean like they're all new. They don't fully know what they're doing yet. So it's like,
I don't call it mistakes, I call it learning moments.
So I really am optimistic for the future of the franchise, provided they stick with this crew. If they just do the same thing, and like everyone, maybe this game was really stressful.
Guys, I know wheels are great, but how about squares? Be great.
Like if they go through the same thing again, then maybe not. But if this core team sticks together for the next game, with Vince in charge, with all the stuff they've learned, and with their 2, 3, 4 extra years of experience, I think that is a really good thing. I think I know it sounds naive because we've had that many disappointing launches. That,
how many times can they make the same mistake?
Yeah,
again.
It's like,
right.
It has to be like that at some point. They have to actually. There has to come a point where it's like, okay, now what they did learn is actually helping them. And I think the reason that hasn't come yet is because all those devs left. So they learned all that stuff from like Battlefield 1's live service and then Battlefield 5's launch. And then they left. So the team who worked on this game, they didn't learn that, and they don't know what happened. So now they've had to learn it. It depends whether they actually stick together. That's like the main thing, because
all of the ingredients are there now.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the higher ups that they have now with Vince and Marcus and those guys, like that is like, I think a team with really strong leadership and then a young team who's got experience is like the best combo you can have. Because I think an old team, sometimes you have, like when you've got a lot of devs who are like in their 50s, sometimes their creativity is sort of going away. They've spent their whole lives doing it. You kind of do lose creativity eventually, or they have one way that they feel like it should be done. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that when you're really experienced at something, that's really good for the most part, but it also leads to you being a bit more closed-minded, because you're like, this is how it has to be. When we all know the gaming industry is not like stagnant. It is constantly changing. So I think that's where young devs is actually a really good thing. For this game, it maybe wasn't, because they kind of had to carry it, and they were like so inexperienced that it wasn't a good thing. But I think when you've got a slightly experienced but very young team, that's like the best you can have if you've got the right leadership. If you've got that team with also inexperienced leadership, that's a recipe for disaster. But that team with Vince and Marcus and Rebecca leading the franchise, I think that's a really, really good mix. So I think it just comes down to whether they actually, whether they stick together and don't have another like exodus of people, because obviously that'll be
Yeah.
We'll just lose all this work straight away. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, like you said, we've got the ingredients that are Vin Zampella, Rebecca Kutaz, Marcus Leto. Then we have the experience with Battlefield 2042, the experience with the now new and somewhat broken in Frostbite 4, as well as the experience with delivering a live service that they've never done before and offering it on a new platform that they never released a game on. They are now putting themselves in a much better situation for some really good changes to be made. And the key thing here is that you can't really change the culture in a company unless you do it drastically. A lot of people have to leave. A lot of people have to come in to really change the corporate structure and the corporate culture. And I feel like they're really close to that like turning point with a difference in the culture around how DICE handles games, because they've historically had a very specific way they've handled things.
Yeah, exactly. I think you need that culture change sometimes. I think almost every company goes through, like, you know, they just get to a point where it's just not working the way that it needs to, and something has to change. And like that sucks when that happens, because it does result in usually a few years worth of like not good content or whatever the company is working on. And then, but when there is that culture change, it's usually such a breath of fresh air, but they still have kind of the DNA from what made that, like, say, the franchise or that company in the first place, because they still stick to those like core values, I guess, but with a completely new set of eyes on it. And I think that's usually when, like, it was the same with Call of Duty. Like, they got to that point where it was just not doing well.
Yeah.
Then they had a culture change, and what came from that was Warzone, arguably one of the biggest games in the last decade, and still to this day is like so well loved. That came because of that same sort of situation. So I think we are kind of on the verge of that with Battlefield. Whether it, you know, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to work, but most of the time I think it does. So I think we just got to get through this, you know, hope that they keep supporting this game and just kind of get through this game, even though I'm enjoying it. It sounds like I'm saying get through it like it's a terrible thing, but just like push through till the next game. And I think that's where we'll see like all the diversity or I should say adversity that has happened with this game. That's where I think it'll sort of like pay off in a way.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. I think we're getting to the point where like we're going to see some big changes and we're getting to a really good spot. I just hope they, like we talked about last episode, I hope they continue with that. Looking forward a little bit, like we've had the mid-season update. We are on 4.2.0. What do you think the timeline is for the next season?
I don't know. I feel like it should most likely stick with what they've gone with, but also they've kind of been a little bit more like, remember when they were saying we're going to start doing the patch notes a week before?
Yeah.
Then they just didn't.
Lasted none time.
Yeah. But then this time they did it. So it's like, what? Like they're getting a little bit more like hard to read in that sense. So I think it'll just be the same. Like they're just the end of, what would it be, May? We'll get season 5, but also like I don't know, because they have definitely been a little bit more like sporadic, I guess, lately. They're just kind of doing whatever. So yeah, I'm not really sure, but I definitely think season 5 would just have like the typical content, new battle pass, the new map, couple weapons and all that. I guess 5.1 will have Hourglass. I don't know. Maybe 5.2.
Or 5.2. Like if it does like what this season did, we didn't get the new map until 4.2. But what, like, how do you feel? And well, let's get like a temperature check. We haven't hopped on the podcast. Obviously, we released the last episode. We're getting back into the groove of things. In terms of like a temperature check around Battlefield 2042 right now, like how are you feeling? Like, do you feel like the discarded update's going to really push things forward until the end of May?
It's a tough one. I will be honest, I think most of the updates in this game don't have that much legs to them. They're really fun when they first drop, but then for me anyway, I kind of just play them a lot for the first, like, it seems like it's a cycle of update drops. That week I play it like for hours every day.
Yeah.
The next week I probably play it for an hour or two every couple of days, and then the next 2 weeks until the next update, I just jump on when I can. Like, I'm not in a rush to play.
Yeah.
It's kind of been that cycle for like, I don't even know how long at this point. And other than maybe season 3, I think I was genuinely addicted in season 3 because Spearhead was just so good that I was like playing every day for like months. But yeah, I would say I don't think it has the legs to last this month for me. But then if everyone else has been playing the whole time, I don't see how this one's any different than the previous seasons or the previous updates. So I just think this will go just the same as they kind of all have, where, yeah, at least for me, it's just like really fun right now. In a week, it'll be slightly less fun, and then I probably won't really play that much until season 5 drops after that.
Yeah. I hope that's different. Like, I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, though. Like, I feel like we were close. Season 3, like, I sunk so much freaking time into that. And this season so far, I didn't get... I mean, there's a lot of different factors that. There's all the Star Wars stuff that's going on right now. But I feel like I really wish I was able to play more of that limited time only mode. Because if that was going on while this is happening, like, dude, I'd be...
Oh, 100%.
It'd be a completely different tune.
Yeah. I'm exactly the same, I think. Like, that was... I say I haven't felt addicted since season 3, but that I definitely felt a little bit addicted to that mode. It was like every chance I could get, it was like, please let me play that mode. Even the fact that now that it's out, I can say I was playing Survivor before it launched. I was still playing Battlefield. Like, I had a game before launch that I had to cover. I had to finish it, and I was still like, nah, I've been playing that game all day. I want to jump on Battlefield. Like, that says a lot, because not many other games would make me do that. But I was like really wanting to play that mode. So it's unfortunate that the timing, I mean, maybe it's good timing, because then they had that and then the update. So it's kind of extended my addiction, I guess. But it would have been good to, like, all that hype in one would have been pretty cool to have the limited time mode and the new map and, all the changes at once. But
yeah,
unfortunately, the timing was slightly off.
But like, I feel like I hope that if enough other people like were really into it like we were, that like, I think that game mode on Discarded, this new version, would be really fun.
It would be so good. Even like, imagine it, this might be too chaotic, but imagine it only on the boat. Like, that would be just chaos. Especially because it's only 8 per team, so I guess you could. It probably would be chaos, but like, imagine just only on the boat. Pretty similar in a way, I guess. Stranded only had mostly on the boat, didn't it? I can't even remember Stranded at this point.
It was the boat, but it was literally just the boat. Like, it was that outside section that you started on. You know how you have the big open door?
Yeah.
You started about like 50 feet back from that.
Okay.
That's so where like, one team started and the other team started basically on the opposite
top of the boat
version.
As well, or just inside?
You could go on top of the boat, but I didn't see anyone, because all the points are inside the boat itself. No one actually jumped in there. Maybe
that's where this one could have done it differently, where you could have like some on top of the boat and some inside the boat.
Yeah, you could have so much more verticality.
So cool. Yeah, like you could add... There's not that many maps where there is genuine verticality like that. So that would be cool to see. But yeah, again, obviously the timing is just not... I mean, they probably timed it like that on purpose, but for us, I feel like the timing's slightly off.
I mean, I think it's going to struggle a little bit getting closer to the end of May. DICE team, come on, guys! Like, I think it'd be pretty nice to have another limited time only mode there.
Yeah,
would be pretty fun. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's the if they're not going to do like the map reworks and that's what I think they need to do is like give us something, even if it's not content, give us some limited time modes or whatever. Even just like skins or I don't know. There's got to be something because if it's just an update that's essentially fixes, and then we wait a month till the next update that is potentially the same thing, that's where the game starts to die down for me. Because like when you look at Battlefield 5, even right until they cancelled it, it was getting like content, like not even just a bit. It was getting like whole map packs pretty much. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just definitely slightly worried and slightly curious about how they plan to do that because it could hinder the traction the game has at the moment if they just keep doing what they are, but then they're like, oh, we're done with the maps though, so technically speaking, you're getting less content. That'll be very disappointing.
I think that's what Season 5 is going to struggle with, and if they have more seasons after Season 5, I think we've come to this level of like experience with expecting that second push, because I think, what is it, like, is it 2 months or 3 months that each season ends up being?
I think it's 3. It'll be yeah. Each update's a month apart, and there's like say 4.0, 4.1, 4.2. So yeah, usually 3 months.
Yeah, so I feel like that's the struggle with the game right now is they're gonna really struggle with that like second wave or that third wave to keep people going. Like, so let's just say you have the new map, then you have new content, and then you have what's that third month going to be in that 3 month cycle?
Yeah, there has to be every update has to have something like worth coming back for. That's unfortunately how games are these days. They can't. In the past, they were able, when they did like map pack type deals, you'd have the big drop, and then the months in between would be just like fixes or maybe like a slightly, a new weapon or something. That's how it used to be, but it's not how it is anymore. You've got to like people. I think it's also just to do with like attention spans, pretty much. People need to be constantly engaged, or they will just get bored of the game. Like. And I don't consider myself like that with like, I'm not like one of those, the TikTok kids that, can't pay attention for more than 5 seconds. But even me, I do lose attention to a game if it's not like providing that anymore. Because I think really since the Battle Royale like era has come in with Warzone and that, every month there was always something. And now I'm just like, I've been accustomed to that. I'm just used to that sort of setup. So when a game doesn't do that, it's just like, okay, well, now you've lost me now. Like, I'm just not interested. If you're not going to continually update it and do really good things each month, I just don't care for it anymore.
Yeah, I think we're getting to this level of content expectations around that consistency. And I think... I hope that they are looking at bringing more content past Season 5. And if they are, I hope that they take advantage of that situation and seeing, this is the way games are going now. We need to have more consistent updates with content instead of like the only thing that this new update's bringing is a rework of a map that we already released and then a setting change and some new UI fixes.
Yeah. That stuff there, especially without the map, is like just not enough. It's not bad changes. It's improving the game, but we are 18 months into it. I'm not looking for the game to be improved as the selling point at this point. It should have been improved many months ago. Like it shouldn't really even it should get to a point where it doesn't really even need fixes at that point.
Yeah.
And the fact that if that's the selling point, I'm not going to ever complain about fixes, but if that's what you're selling me on, then I'll be honest, it's not the best sell. Like you need to be doing a bit better than that. Early in the game, I can get like with this game, obviously the first few months there was no content and it was just fixes, but that was okay because the game was such a mess that I was like, I will take a big bug fix update. That's completely fine.
Yeah.
But we're not in January of 2022 now. We're in freaking nearly May of 2023. So we need the content. We need the stuff to do, not fixing the game that's been out for this long.
Yeah, exactly. There's a different expectations. Like the content should be maturing instead of like it feeling like we get less content each season.
Yeah.
Because the next season we're not going to get a specialist.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's the other thing is what do they need to replace that with something. If we just get a bit less content, that to me would mean like it's a slow decline towards the end of the game. That's a bad thing. Like even look at Battlefront 2. That was like each update was getting more and more insane. It was like exponential growth per update.
Yeah.
I would even say same with Battlefield 5. Maybe not quite to the same level as Battlefront 2, but it was like there wasn't 5 maps in one update and then 4 in the next. It was just like massive updates each time. With this one, it's like, okay, now we're done with the specialists and then we're also done with the maps, like the reworks. So in Season 4, you got a new specialist and X amount of reworked maps. Now, unfortunately, you get everything you got but minus the specialist and minus the map. That's a big L for me. Like that is not not a good selling point.
Yeah, I hope we do get to that point where I hope after this time, because they took a little bit of extra time. I hope we get to see some of that come to fruition with these rumors going about with more content and all that stuff, that we do get to see that rise in just engagement and that like stepping up of the content. If they do more stuff like the Leviathan Rising event, if they do more of that like tie-in stuff and they bring more of that of like really tying in the map and the experience and the whole thing of the engagement on that regular basis, I think we could be somewhere really, really great for it. And it would be good for the franchise as a whole and the Battlefield name and DICE, which they need desperately.
Yeah, they have to keep this going as long as they can until the next game, because they've still, I think they've earned a lot of trust back from most of the fan base, but that doesn't mean that we're instantly just going to buy the next game. I think like a lot of us will. I know I will buy the next Battlefield. That's just how I am. But a lot of people won't, and they have to keep really proving it. It's not like you can just prove it once and then be like, see, we did it. Now let's cancel the game and we'll release a new one. You've got to like constantly earn that trust back to the point where it's like genuine trust. It's not just, yeah, I guess they fixed the game. Like that'll do. It's to the point where we're like diehard fans again. Because I think even though a lot of people trust DICE again in terms of like with this game, I think a lot of the diehard fans aren't quite as diehard as they were, and you got to kind of get them back for like in the lead up to the next game.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. I think the diehard fans are there, but like I didn't buy Battlefield 5 at all. I was given it by one of the lovely devs, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then I got it on Game Pass. So I never actually bought that game because I wasn't interested in it. Like it didn't look quite to the level that I wanted, and it took until the game like really got towards the end. Like I hopped on a couple months before it like they officially ended the support, and I loved it. I thought it was in such a good direction, and I really, really hope that we don't get to that in Battlefield 2042.
Yeah, 100%. That would be like the biggest disappointment for me. Is that just a repeat of what they've just done? It wouldn't be a repeat, it would be the three-peat. They would have done it with Battlefront, Battlefield 5, and now this. Like, you've got to... I would be genuinely annoyed to the point where I think that would actually make me not... I just said I would definitely buy the next Battlefield because I just love the franchise, but...
I'm not pre-ordering it.
Yeah, if they do that again, no, I honestly would get to maybe the point where it's like, I don't even know if I'd buy it until they prove me wrong at the launch of that game. Like, I would be so frustrated by them making the same mistake 3 times. I can understand the first time, like any mistake the first time, fair enough. Everyone makes mistakes. The second time, there's still a little bit of leeway. It's like, okay, you should have learned from the first time, but like stuff happens. Third time is not a mistake. It's a decision. You've done that on purpose. So if they do it again with this game, like I think I'll just be over shooters for a while, to be honest. I've just been burned by so many of them. I'll just be like, nah. Until I see people at the launch of the next Battlefield saying, "Oh my god, this is the one. This is the one that we wanted." And like after launch, not in the lead up, because we all thought it looked so good before launch. Until that point, I think I'd just be like, nah, I'm not buying it. And until I see Jack Frags or someone after launch saying, "Wow, this is the best Battlefield," then I'll buy it. But that's the level of disappointment I would have if they make that mistake the third time in what it was 2020 when they cancelled those two. So the same mistake 3 times in 3 years, essentially. That would be embarrassing at that point.
Yeah, I hope we don't get to that, because it would be very depressing on many different levels.
Yep.
But I think with that, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Battlefield Show. We greatly appreciate you joining us this week, and we look forward to continuing to dive deeper, and we'll come back next time with our deeper review of the discarded map rework, all the juicy details that come with that. As always, hey, thanks for listening, checking us out. We'd like to thank Ethan Clark for the beautiful thumbnail. All of you, once again, for listening. Check out Sammy Boy's channel, our content on Star Wars as well, Sammy Boy Star Wars and Star Wars Uplink. And we'll see you on the battlefield.